walking the serpentine path, following the footsteps of the ancestors, walking the serpentine path, making our way back home. Hey ya, hey, hey ya, ho, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho, hey ya, hey, hey ya, ho. Following the serpentine path, Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Serpentine Path podcast. My name is Claire Wadiasid, and I am a student midwife, spiritual counselor, multidisciplinary artist, founder of Sage Femme Womb, and your guide on this serpentine path of life. Together, we'll dive deep into all things related to plant medicine, ancestral reconnection, intergenerational healing, womb sovereignty and bodily autonomy, rites of passage and initiation, time travel, shape-shifting, dimension hopping, the reclamation of our collective earth-based practices, and the ongoing, never-ending cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Welcome to the serpentine path where the ancestors have called us back to. Let's start at the end and find our way back home together. Hello, everyone. Before we get into this week's episode, all about men and the role that they play in the rebirth of matriarchy, I want to share a little bit about the trajectory that the podcast is on. So I love to look at the podcast analytics and kind of see why are people listening to the show and what things are they searching and why is the show coming up for them. And recently, there's been a new one that's come up in the analytics that's all about conscious relating. And as always, I'm so curious. I felt the same way when the analytics were always saying adult female initiations. I was like, is that what my podcast is about? And it turns out it is kind of about that. And I felt similarly. I was like, is my podcast about conscious relating? Is that what I'm doing here? And apparently, I guess so. And it's been informing. It's funny because I already wanted to take my work in this direction over the summer. And then seeing those podcast analytics kind of reaffirmed to me, okay, yeah, this is where my work needs to go right now. Because a couple of months ago, I guess probably back in February or March, I woke up one morning from a really, really strong dream. And I had this very, very clear transmission, which was men need to come together and pray for women, and women need to come together and pray for men. And I was like, I don't know what that means. I guess I have to start figuring it out. And so over the next couple of months, all of my work that I'm going to be sharing on the podcast, in my writing, and then with a lot of offerings that I'm going to be sharing with you guys are all going to be devoted to that transmission. The men need to come together and pray for the women need to come together and pray for the men. So the first offering that I have for you guys is going to be a free class that I'm teaching on Wednesday, May 20th, called The Current State of Men and Women. And that is going to be a free co-ed class. A lot of people have been asking me to start teaching co-ed classes, which is not something that I ever really expected to be doing. until a bunch of men started asking me, like, hey, can you please teach everything that you're teaching for women, but also for men? So, this episode is a little bit of an introduction into that work. If you would like to join that class on May 20th, again, it's free. Sign up for my newsletter and you'll start getting information about it within the next couple of weeks coming up. All right, let's jump into this episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Serpentine Path podcast. My name is Claire Wadiasid. I'm your host, and it is such an honor and gift and pleasure to have an incredible woman on the show today, a dear friend. Her name is Brittney Bernadette Guimond. Welcome to the show. It's such a gift to have you.
It's beautiful to be here. I have really loved your podcast the last couple years, and yeah, just so much richness in all the conversations. So good to finally weave together after some time of holding the intention. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I'll share a little bit about our path and our context and how we know each other. But I want to give you the opportunity to answer the question that I ask all of my guests, which is if your ancestors were here with us now, which of course they always are, how would they introduce you and what role would they say that you play in your family lineage?
They would introduce me as like I do believe that every child of every lineage is a prayer answered, prophecy. Um, but definitely a daughter of the earth, deeply connected to the subtle realms of Pachamama. And yeah, here to commune with my ancestors through the elements, through the subtle realms, through the earth, and very much an open vessel to receive perhaps the prayers that they have weaved, um, yeah, in the cosmos to come through me. I feel like there's a openness that they have offered me in this life to be a vessel to receive their prayers. Yeah. And the role, I mean, I do have what I feel is my grandmother's heart, very close to, again, the natural world and the unseen realms. And there's so many ways the work that I am devoted to in this lifetime, um, like need that. It needs the subtlety, it needs the reception, it needs the listening to the unseen, the connecting to the unseen, womb work, birth work, childcare, even, the poetry I love, like just this reception to an unseen world. And there's no question that that would take the ancestors being present through me to allow that level of openness I feel I've inherited. So yeah, that's how I would answer that one.
Oh, so beautiful. And it makes me think of, well, to give context as to like what our connection is. Before I talk about what this makes me think of is that you and I have been in connection now for like almost a year. You got connected through me by listening to one of the podcast episodes that I did with a past guest. And you like tagged me on Instagram. And I looked through your work and I was like, oh my God, I love what this woman is doing so much. It's like she's creating beautiful, beautiful things in the world. And for like many, many months, we were just kind of like fangirling each other. Like, I love what you're talking about. I love what you're talking about. This is awesome, blah, blah, blah. And then there was one point in particular where you were sharing pretty openly about the impacts of like pornography on the womb space as a woman and what was being experienced in the bodies of women when we're engaging with men who are engaging with pornography. And I saw you post about that, and I immediately messaged you and was like, girl, I was literally going to write something about this today. And like, I'm happy I didn't because I actually think that I want to have more of a conversation with you about this on the podcast. And so that was originally what we were kind of thinking about doing, which I'm sure that that will like weave in. But for months and months, we were like, okay, we'll make it work. And things just were not lining up for whatever reason. And then when I found out that I was one, actually, first, I found out that you're a moon dancer. And I was like, oh my gosh, I've wanted to moon dance, blah, 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 like whatever. And then maybe a couple weeks later, I found out that I was going to be moon dancing. And it was like very accidental that I ended up in the circle that I ended up in. Like it, I don't know. I won't get super into my path with moon dance right now. But I texted you and was like, I'm going to be moon dancing. And you were like, wait, what circle? And I told you. And you were like, that's where I dance. And I was like, there's no way. That's crazy. And so a couple months passed and we were able to finally cross paths together in Mexico, which was amazing, and meet each other in person. And it was so beautiful to see your sweet face and to give you a hug and just be like, wow, okay, yeah, like being able to root in with this person. And so all of that is to say, when you were talking about, the first thing of like, who am I? Like, what my ancestors introduced me as is like daughter of the earth. I was thinking about when I gave you that closing of the bones ceremony. And when I had you closed up and I was singing for you, the very first thing that kept coming through was just like daughter of the earth, daughter of the earth, daughter of the ancestors. Like that's just who she is. And I felt so many of your incredible ancestors coming through. And so, yeah, I totally second that. Like when I feel the work that you do in the world and the softness and the subtlety and the sensitivity and also the strength, like the ferocity that you walk with and the protectorship that you walk with, like it is like deep, deep ancestral grandmother channeling through you. So just witnessing you in that and reflecting that back to you for sure. Um, I will give you a little bit of an opportunity now to share a little bit more about your path, your work, your orientation in this world, anything that you want to offer to listeners who might not yet be familiar with you.
Wow, Claire. Firstly, I just want to like full goosebumps as you shared that. Yeah, it's really incredible when the things we know are affirmed in the physical before us. It's like God showing us the alignment of what we know to be true within and like the aha, of course. So thank you for speaking to that. And yeah, I mean, I'll start by sharing my quote unquote, brand business name, feminine origins. When that name came through, it did feel so connected to the origins, the ancestors. And, such a big, like the ancestors can mean many different things, not even just our physical, biological ancestors, but like the earth, the stones, the trees, the clay of the earth, the soil of the earth, like all of these ways that we are um, nurtured by our environment, by the mother, even the cosmos, the dark womb void that we come from as little, sparks of light down into the womb of a mother. These are all our ancestors. And feminine origins at whole, it's the prayer behind it, the entity that it is, it's kind of interesting word, but like to kind of encapsulate who she is, it's a desire to bring women back home to the home of their womb, the home of the earth, the home of their origin story, which is so profound, so much bigger than what we actually realize with our logical mind, so much more beautiful and complex. And to piece back our memory, our conscious mind to the profound beauty of our womanhood on an energetic level, physiological level, spiritual, emotional, every level. And through the body of work of womb work, both physiological womb work, shamanic womb work, really remembering the inheritance we have as women with our wombs, even post hysterectomy. I always like to name that. Um, and remembering our true essence as women that lives in the womb, I believe. And there's so many ways that we can be distracted and pulled away and go through these wild but wise journeys to learn about human life. But again and again, no matter where we go, we always have our home when we are awakened to our womb. And when I speak about womb awakening in my work, I always like to share it's not about it like waking up inside of us and like, whoa, what's happening? This big cathartic experience, but awakening to the wisdom of the womb, awakening to the path of the womb, which could mean, the herbal allies that come to us to support us in womb wellness. It could mean, um, the bodies of water that help us heal. Womb work could mean connecting to poetry, painting, expression. There's so many ways that the womb path and womb awakening shows us like who we truly are, because we all come, on this earth before the world, touches us and taints us and shows us all these different distorted ways of being. We come to this earth with our essence intact. And that remains within us always, our original essence, our original innocence. And to me, coming home to our womb is remembering who we truly are. And it is such a deep gift to support women in private womb ceremonies, hands-on work, energy work, guided through online spaces as well, guiding women to the portal of their womb, practices that support womb wellness, and at whole building an intimate relationship to their womanhood, to their womb space, and the profound world that that offers to each woman and everyone that relates with her from that place.
Oh, so beautiful and so deeply aligned with all of the work that I do, right? As a student of midwifery and as someone who works a lot with women, both in the virtual and in-person space. And really, really, like what I think back to so much is my reclamation of understanding womanhood for myself was like all through the suffering in my womb. Like I went through so much illness and pain and violence and abuse and suffering in my womb space that it was my womb that was like, you have to look at me, right? Like there is no bypassing the reality of the body and the reality of your female experience because it all is being held in the womb. And I think about the womb as such this incredibly psychedelic space, right? As someone who I've done a lot of plant medicine, I've worked a lot in altered states of consciousness. And I really view the womb as like one of the most insane altered states of consciousnesses that you can tap into because it is that creation space. It is that void of destruction and birth and death and everything in between. And I just love all of the work that you do so much, just holding such deep reverence and the clear, like, recentering and like true devotion to the womb, right? And to women in general, which we're going to get deep into with this conversation today because we're talking all about matriarchy. We're talking about how men relate to it. We're talking about how we as women are going to be really, again, recentering our biological needs, our reproductive needs, because we are the ones that continue the species into the future, right? Like we are the ones who are carrying the seeds of the future 7 generations. And so then what does that look like to really, really guide women back home, like you're speaking to? Like, this is your home. These are your origins. This is your inheritance. I loved that word that you used. This is your inheritance, right? Like, it's your birthright, I often say, to be in right relationship with your womb, to be at peace in your womb, to be at peace when you're bleeding, to be at peace when you're postpartum, to give birth in power, like to shift into menarche and menopause celebrated by your community and witnessed in those rites of passages, right? Like all of that. So there I go, like just fangirling about your work because I love it so much and I'm on the same frequency with you. So yes, love you so much. um
I'd love to add something to that around the psychedelic nature of the womb. And I mean, there's a lot out there so beautiful around the psychedelic nature of birth, right? And like the time space that we enter when we're birthing and all of that. But one thing that was really incredible looking back, retrospect, about my womb journey, I was connecting with my womb before I was, like exposed to things like quote unquote yoni massage and womb awakening. I was seeing a pelvic health physiotherapist to release some hypertension in my pelvis. So I'd be going to these appointments to like breathe and like do intravaginal massage and learn different techniques. And so when I brought these practices home, alongside learning about Reiki and going through my first spiritual awakening at like 2021, I was doing intravaginal massage and I would get these visions so just like sacred geometry, quantum spirals, like, and I was like, oh, it must be because I'm awakening like my Reiki hands, like, but it is the quantum psychedelic shamanic nature of the womb. And of course, this is the bridge between two worlds. And it's no surprise that when we begin to commune with our womb, life literally becomes like in Womb Awakening, Serene and Ezra, they say it's a book by a beautiful couple. They say it's like this living fairy tale. Like it's like you are living in a different state of consciousness when you're plugged into your womb. And I experienced that, like going in, breathing. I was like, where am I going? And when I guide womb journeys for women through drum, through guided practice, through really centering the, sensation and connection to our wombs together in space, we go deep. We enter this collective womb space, and with our womb sovereign as well, but like going within and retrieving visuals, insights, clear knowing that's a no for me, that's a yes for me. And I often say, you know, when we are in right relationship with our womb and connected, our cunning knowing, our nimble insight, like it's so precise. It becomes so precise of like, that's not it. That's it. And sometimes we'll spiral away from our clear knowing because that's just being human. And this journey is wise and wild, but we'll always be able to come back to that place of like, wait a minute, I know what I need. And connecting to our basic needs as women is a way to access that world of like, oh, I have to go pee right now. Okay, I'm respecting and honoring my needs. And that opens the world of like, wow, when I'm listening, what am I really hearing beyond my physiological needs? Oh, I'm getting an insight of a plant to work with. Oh, I'm getting an insight of where I'm meant to travel to. Like, there's so much that lives in the intuitive waters of our womb space. And it is, like you said, this psychedelic, wild world when we're plugged in and connected. It's such a gift.
Yeah, it is a huge, huge gift, a huge blessing to be a woman and to be someone who walks with that level of power inside of your body, right? And also responsibility, which always comes with power. But yeah, at some point I'm going to release an episode about when I did my pelvic body work training. And it was truly one of those moments where both receiving and giving during my training full visions like the entire time. Like I remember walking out of the space and looking at one of my teachers and being like, that was like an ayahuasca ceremony. And I've done hundreds, right? I was like, that was fully like my time in the jungle, right? Like, no joke. And she was like, yep, the womb is psychedelic, just straight up, right? Like, it just holds all of the, I mean, I taught a class on this past week, all of the creative potential of the female libido and the female life force energy, like that is held in the womb space. It births everything into being on earth. Like everything in the cosmos comes from that. Yeah, like divine cosmic womb space for sure. Oh my gosh. Okay, let's get into it. Let's talk about matriarchy. What is your personal vision of matriarchy? Because I feel like when people talk about matriarchy, the only other version of some kind of archy power system that we have is patriarchy, right? And so people oftentimes will equate it with like, it's been male domination over women, and so matriarchy is the opposite of that. Matriarchy is women dominating men, which I know is not my orientation to it, and I know that's not your orientation to it. So please share with us what, in your view, like what is actual matriarchy looking like in practice, and specifically the aspect of like mother-centered community care and resourcing in that way.
Yes, thank you for speaking to that because that is an important piece to name in the now times of, fuck the patriarchy. We needed a matriarchy. And it's like, wait a minute, let's just like dial back for a second. Like, what are we really speaking about when we say the word matriarchy? And it reminds me of feminism. There's such a spectrum of people's awareness of what feminism means and what it truly is. And matriarchy to me, I mean, I think of a spiral. I see the importance of women and children being held by protectors, by, the men, right? I see um, Earth playing a huge part in matriarchy of our relationship to the Great Mother, to reciprocity, to how we relate at whole with the feminine within ourselves, all genders, everyone included, like how we're relating to natural law. And yeah, the centering of children being a huge importance because if we're not bringing liveliness, guardianship, protection, provision to our future ancestors, our future world, what are we doing? How are we creating a new world if we're not centering children, if we're not centering those who bring children to the earth, right? And when I think of matriarchy, I think of all the things that have gone so unseen in our world, postpartum care, you know, the essentialism of mobilizing community to support women who are early postpartum, who are needing that covering, that protection, that provision, and how that plays out into the culture of if women are tended to in birth and postpartum and children are taken care of as well and true coherent present love and connection, then that is our future people of the world. Those are the people who are taking care of the earth, taking care of their bodies, taking care of each other. And so matriarchy really feels like an orientation to life. What is life giving? It's being a guardian of, life, of children, of birth, of the feminine within ourselves, and being in collaboration. I think that's a huge part of matriarchy that goes missed is I don't believe it's about women being the authority and leaders of community, of society, in culture, but being collaborative and finding, mutual understandings of what works well for our people, what is actually life-giving for our society, and holding space for the many different complex realities of human nature, not just a small percentage or not just self-gaining, but collaborative understandings of what do we need? How can we co-create that to the benefit of all beings?
Hmm. So beautiful. And yeah, it mirrors my orientation, right? Of a few things that you said, like reorientation to natural law and reorientation to life. What is life giving, right? And when I think about natural law, and when I think about my time living in the jungle, living within an intact indigenous culture and seeing the ways in which family systems and community systems are naturally set up to be the most life-giving, right? Is that the needs of the most vulnerable people are prioritized. The most vulnerable people who are in a community are first and foremost, right, are children. Then, as you spoke to, the people who are bringing those children into the world, who are the women, right? Being a woman is unbelievably vulnerable, especially when you are in the reproductive continuum, right? Pregnancy, well, one, sex is incredibly vulnerable, just in general, but especially for a woman. Pregnancy is unbelievably vulnerable for a woman. Childbirth is unbelievably vulnerable for a woman. And then postpartum is like the most vulnerable that a woman can be, right? She just literally ripped her body open, pushed a life into the world, a whole ass human through her vagina. She's bleeding. Her hormones have crashed. She's often very depleted. Like, she has just gone through the most physically intense act that a woman can possibly go through in her life. And then we get to the postpartum time, and what we're currently seeing, right, is there is no support, there is no initiation, there's no rite of passage, there's no centering of that mother. No one's bringing her cooked food, no one's offering her body work, no one is coming around to make sure that she's never alone with that baby, because that is an insane thing to do, to have a mother, a brand new mother, right, alone with this little baby that she's now responsible for taking care of. Like, when you look at an intact culture, that would never, ever happen, right? We have all of the focus and centering and love and support and resourcing going towards supporting the mothers, supporting these little children who are coming through, who are the future. And I would also say supporting the elders who are not at a point of like their peak physical strength where they would be able to go out and like fight and protect in the way that they could when they were younger. And so then we have that circle of those protectors and those providers around because they understand that in order for their people's lifeways to continue, in order for their own legacy, their own bloodline to continue forward into the world, it is their most divine duty, their most divine expression of their life force energy to tend that with so much love and so much care. So that gets into the next question I have for you of like, what is the role that men have within this matriarchal structure? I think we both agree that I don't see it as like men don't have leadership roles. I think that men actually do have a lot of leadership roles in a matriarchal system. And so, what is it feeding? And what are the ways in which men would be responsible for really showing up for the vulnerable people in their lives? Like when you look at of like the practical things that men would be responsible for. What is it that you're seeing in your field?
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you. And thank you for bringing the elders in. That's a really important piece in matriarchy that I also really, really believe in is the vulnerable population feeling cared for and tended to. But yeah, the question around men's role and, you know, the way that I see matriarchy and men's role and relationship to it. I mean, first and foremost, men building a relationship, a, a intimate relationship with their own heart, with their own sensitivity. I don't believe that as a woman we can trust men until they are willing and courageous enough to be with their own sensitivity. And I have so much compassion for the way that men have adapted to not have that, you know, relationship to their own heart and to their own subtlety and sensitivity. But it is essential, especially in the birth continuum and the reproductive continuum and sex, like all of it, to be able to sensitize and attune to the woman before you because you're able to sensitize and attune to your own heart and sensitivity. And so the first step, I'd say, in a practical way, is men being able to relate with their own hearts, their own emotions, their own wonder and awe and childlike beauty within themselves so that they can translate, the experience of a woman or as a child back onto themselves of, wow, like I have that within and I'm a guardian of that. I'm a protector of that sacredness. It's not this thing that feels foreign and outside of themselves, but it's like, this is something worth standing for and protecting. And yeah, that can't be seen and understood the same way until it's touched within, right? So, um, and on another practical level, like when it comes to birth, like men, fathers, women's partners, women's husbands, being informed about what's really happening, right? I remember learning about how so many moments in birth when the man's so excited to have a doula because he's like, what is happening? I need some support to guide me through this experience because like I think, we need a doula. Like we need someone in the home or in the birth to show me what to do. And if there was um if men had that education and awareness of what is happening in a woman's body in menstruation, in prenatal, what she needs, birth, the birth plan, the postpartum plan, and is actively, presently, totally in and ready to receive that, that would be a huge game changer in culture, right? I think even um, starting so young and allowing, I mean, both girls and boys, but like young boys to be aware of the profound nature of a womb, right? Of course, age appropriate, but learning about what really happens in their mother's bodies that brought them to earth. If we were to sit in circle together and talk about the womb and birth in age appropriate ways, a young boy's mind would open up, wow, women are so sacred. Life is so sacred. And how am I going to grow in this body and become a man one day to be a guardian of that sacredness, of that life? So I feel like connecting to the sensitive nature that we all have within and being exposed to information. And I really do feel like there is such a curiosity and a deep like awe somewhere within men that it's like, wow, like when I talk about the womb, or I've done, festivals, co-ed talks about womb consciousness and men's role in womb wellness. And overall, when I speak about the womb, there is this like, whoa, tell me more about this organ. Like, because perhaps to some, and women as well, it's like this, the logical mind's like, oh, that's an organ in the body. It's like, well, no, that is the bridge between two worlds that we all have come from. And I think just being exposed to how profound that reality really is would shift consciousness to want to really orient towards being a guardian of it. Yeah.
Oh, I love all of what you just shared, right? And I'm thinking so much about, yeah, what you were speaking to in the birth continuum, in the reproductive continuum, right? Like I have a couple of things that I can tie into with that, right? One is that I know a woman who free birthed her last baby. She had a midwife for her first birth. She free birthed her second baby, and I asked her, if you were to have more kids, um, would you want a free birth again? And her response was, no, I would want you to be my midwife. And I was like, one, so honored. I'm not trained yet. Give me 3 good years to get licensed and seriously certified and trained, but I'll be there. But I asked her, I was like, why? Like you free birthed, right? Like you went through this whole process and you really enjoyed it. And she was like, I did. And also I want my husband to just be able to like be my husband in that experience, right? Like I don't want him to be my doula. I don't want him to be my midwife. Like I want to have a field of safety and education and like orientation around it so that my husband just gets to be in the experience with me and not entirely concerned about my safety the whole time, right? And what I see in like the clinics that I'm in right now with the midwives that I'm apprenticing under, it's really beautiful to see the men come into midwifery care, right? And to see them in conversation with the midwife, like, hey, tell me about that like childbirth partner class that is taught, in the city. Like, I really want to go and like do I think it's called like the birth partner class, or like there's a book I think that's called like The Birth Partner or something like that that's very well known. They recommend that a lot to men, but like seeing men, especially when they're women, have taken the decision of like, I don't want to birth in the hospital, and not to say that like it's a bad thing to birth in the hospital. I think that there are circumstances when it's necessary, when a woman would be more comfortable, she would feel more safe. However, when I see women who have made the decision, like, I want to do midwifery care and I want to receive a different model of care, a more actually, I would say, like culturally attuned model of care with a midwife, the husbands that come in, the ones who are really online, they are asking so many questions, and not in like an annoying, invasive way, but like they're truly like, how can I best show up for my partner in this moment, right? Like, what is my role in this? And I think having doulas around, having midwives around, having childbirth educators around, and women in particular who are willing to do that work with the men and to say, like, yeah, let's talk about what your role is in this, right? Because men love a role. They love having like clear steps, clear practices, clear purpose of like, what do I do in this space, right? And I think that that really is like what you do with a lot of your work, with the co-ed work that you're doing and the work that is being called forth in my work currently, which is that I have always predominantly only worked with women. And over the past couple of months, I have gotten so many men and women both who have said, like, please teach a co-ed class. Please teach this to the men, like men specifically asking, like, can she teach a class like this for men? And that is such a huge shift too that we're seeing right now, right? Of like men wanting to come to female educators who are saying like, teach me about how to be in right relationship with the womb, with the female body, with female physiology, with her hormones, with her reproductive system, with her essence, right? Like I want to be of service to that, which is incredible what we're seeing, right? Like that's such a shift in the collective right now. And then tapping into what you were talking about, like really with the boys, right? Which is like I had a woman in my container, the red tent, who I have like a whole class, one of the classes all about our relationship with our blood and how we reintegrate the ceremonial of our monthly moon time every single month, right? And specifically offering our blood back to the earth. And this woman came into class, I think the next class, and she talked about how she got her bleed and she gave her blood back to the earth for the first time. And the first night she did it just alone. And the second night she did it with her 4-year-old son and with her husband. And like the tears that came through in her and in me when she was talking about how her son was understanding the sacredness of what it was of his mother giving her blood back to the earth. Like she was like, I can't explain how much shifted in our relationship in that moment. And with my husband too, right? Me communicating to him how he can care for me on my bleed and him really showing up and saying, I love this. Thank you for telling me how I can support you. Thank you for telling me how I can provide for you and protect you when you're in this vulnerable time every month. Like, thank you so much. The shift that just that creates when women come to our center and learn how to communicate to the men, this is your role. This is how you show up, and then trust that they do it and give like gratitude for it. The men and the boys who then get to see that and who are watching that transition, that's how we see culture shift in our families and then ripple out into our communities. Because then those little boys like show up at school. Oh my God, I think she said something like her son was like, a little girl came over and he was like, Mom, like, can we do the blood thing with her? And the mom was like, No, like, I don't know what her mom's relationship is to that. Like, we're not going to do that. But like a little boy of that age being like, this is normal, this is natural, this is sacred, right? This is special, this is magical. Like, that changes everything. So, yeah. Okay. We have like what the ideal would be, right? What we're talking about here. Let's also talk about like the reality of what men and women are facing, what the womb is currently facing, and what especially are like some of the tools that I often think of like disconnection and distortion and separation that pull men away from their divine design as the protectors and providers of the women and children and elders. I know I have some thoughts on it, but I want to hear your thoughts first.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I mean, I could relate that straight back to what we were just speaking on, what you were sharing around how we teach others to relate with us, right? And how we teach children by how we show up in the world. I worked in childcare for, I don't know, 8 years, 10 years on and off. Um, and the modeling of how we take care of ourselves, right, impacts the young ones immensely. So, I mean, I just want to speak to that a little bit, like how we show up in the world, how we take care of ourselves, how we let ourselves be loved in front of our children or other children in the world. I think all of that helps pivot a different culture of relationship between men and women and with ourselves, our bodies as women. And then that same system with partners, with men, with relationships. If we have a clear knowing of what we deeply need because we're in relationship with our womb and our body and our physiology and our intuition, then we can communicate that to the men in our lives. Like, hey, like, I'm currently bleeding. I'm at like almost 10% of my normal capacity of energy. I would love if you could support me a little bit more this week in the home or like whatever it may be in the workplace. Like who knows, but like an ideal culture, would take us communicating our needs, but firstly being able to recognize our needs. So that I guess speaks to the self-responsibility as women. But on the other end, yeah, the distortions and the ways that we have both men and women been pulled away from coherence with our bodies, with our hearts, with our spirit. are all of the intentional distractions on earth and how tempting and alluring that can be when we are so um, immersed in trauma and survival and tension in the body, in the mind, and the organ, like all of it, and how much easier it is to pick a path of short-lived relief versus long-term um, alignment and opening and capacity for life and life force. And we see that with anything that's addictive, anything that takes our attention away from, our self, our heart, our consciousness. Um, I mean, our phones are an example in a deeper um, realm, like pornography, which I know we're going to talk about, drug use, media, really just like the worlds that we're feeding because it feels like a temporary relief as humans versus what is deeply gratifying and what is actually like necessary to birth a new way, which takes willingness and devotion and sometimes discomfort to be like, whoa, this way is really not working. And becoming aware of the subtle consequences of choosing those pathways of relief. So, yeah, I feel like on the opposite end of young boys being exposed to the beauty of life and nature and womb and, blood ritual, like you're sharing in that story, would be young boys being exposed to things like pornography, being exposed to things in media that infiltrate their minds to think that women are to be objectified, that, you know, boundaries with young girls don't matter. Like there's so many subtle ways that our culture has um put in our minds like what is appropriate and what is not. And there's a lot of heavy, heavy, heavy distortion that we're culturally now being aware of and being like, okay, what do we do with this? Do we just say, oh, this is so scary and shitty, like fuck? Or do we like actively take responsibility for the world that we're trying to create by being in relationship to our hearts, to our wombs, to each other, bit by bit, not overnight, but being willing to look at where we have also played a role in distortion, right? And what is needed to be in deeper alignment with the goodness of our hearts, the goodness of life, our virtues, our true honest nature, like the goodness of humanity. And I do feel that as women recognizing the goodness of men, the beauty of men, and even men themselves, like recognizing just like how valuable and beautiful they are, and together like pivoting a new culture, but firstly recognizing what is taking energy. What are we feeding? What are we being, what are we just saying? Okay, well, like, I'll just like do this a little bit more. I'll just feed that wolf a little bit longer, but just a bit. I'm not actually a bad person. And, if we were to take it to the realm of like men and men, how there is so much like what is the word, like permission or like approval of like each other being like, yeah, that's pretty fucked up, ha ha ha, versus like that's fucked, that's not okay when a man's speaking in a misogynistic way about a woman, or a man speaking about his past and kind of laughing about the way there's so many examples. And um men being willing to say that's fucked up, man, the same way a woman might say, I see that you're not connecting to the beauty of your womb. Like, there's just such a spectrum, but just ways to reorient back to like true coherence with the heart, with each other, and being willing to see, okay, this is not right. What can I do in this moment to shift out of that, right?
Yeah. So much there. And I think really it boils down to kind of what you were speaking to in the very beginning, the self-responsibility and how we teach other people to treat us, right? How we treat, which is really how we treat ourselves first and foremost. Like, are we in touch with our hearts? I love how you speak to that. Like, are you actually attuned to what's happening in your heart? Are you attuned to what's happening in your body, to your spirit, to your psyche? And I think so much of that when I think about so much of the wounding with men, which I've had so much deep wounding with men in my life, like high degrees of a lot of abuse, a lot of violence, particularly in the realms of sexuality, right? I think about one, there's that shift of like women really orienting to what is the truth in your body right now. Is your body screaming, absolutely fuck no? There is no way that I will accept this, that I will allow this. Like, no, right? And one of the things that comes in a lot with that is what you were speaking to with pornography, right? And I think so much about it these days. It's really in my field right now for a lot of reasons. Because I taught a class on it and I had a very intense conversation with a person about it. Yesterday, there was like a headline, or 2 days ago, I guess, there was a headline that came out on CNN about some like online rape academy where men were like drugging their wives and like sharing, advice. That's all on porn sites, right? And so when I think about as a woman, getting the clarity in your body of the clear understanding, like what does the frequency of sexual violence feel like? And it doesn't mean that you yourself have to have gone through like a rape, but you can feel it in the field because you don't feel safe. When you're with a certain man, you're like, I know that there's something going on in your mind, some kind of like infiltration, it feels like, right? Like some kind of brainwashing, oftentimes from your young childhood. Like you as a man being exposed to pornography at a very young age in a way that was deeply traumatizing for you. You never, oftentimes actually, you were exposed to it by a man, by like a brother, by a cousin, by someone in your life, right? It being brought in, that's a traumatizing event for you as a child because developmentally you should never be seeing something like that. It's so confusing to the brain and the body and the spirit. And then you continue to watch it, oftentimes exposing other boys to it. And so it's like this weird, almost hazing ritual that I often see with men, right? And then that's how they are relating to their erotic life force energy, which a man's erotic life force energy is so sacred. It is so sacred. I mean, even just thinking about the hormone of testosterone, right? Like testosterone, one, brings life forth into the world. It's like what creates the male libido, but it's also creating like the protector. Like when men are under threat, their testosterone levels activate and it boosts them into like this insane Superman physical power that is allowing them to like defend their territory, right? Defend their woman, defend their children, defend their family, defend their land, defend their people's lifeways. Like that is what testosterone is for. And so when we see it being hijacked with pornography, we see what's going on with men, and then we see women like totally disembodied from being able to pull out that strong sword and be like, that is not getting anywhere near my womb. There is zero way in which that is allowed into my field. With my deepest love, my deepest respect, my deepest care, stay 10 feet away from me at all times, minimum, right? Until you sort through that. And I think a lot about that. We can talk about pornography and also circumcision because I know that you have strong feelings about circumcision, as do I. I think about the ways in which we're seeing so much sexual violation of young baby boys with circumcision and genital mutilation. Good Lord, genital mutilation, no pain relief given. One of like the very first experiences that a baby boy is having in its life, the very first experience that it's having of its genitals, aside from usually urinating, right? Not being protected by its mother, not being protected by its father, imprinting sexuality with the understanding of lack of consent, absolute violence, pain, torture, right? That's the blueprint that they have from childhood. And then they move into porn. And that's what we're setting our boys up for. And so when I look at responsibility, right, I'm also looking at mothers and saying, like, why are you allowing your son to be circumcised? What is going on here? Like, how has our mother instinct been so cut off that mothers are not highly alarmed by this, right? So Yeah, I feel I've shared enough. Anything you want to dive into in terms of both circumcision, pornography, like hookup culture, just any of that kind of stuff, these continuous distortions.
Yeah. Oof, I'm gonna light my copal here as we talk. I, yeah, everything you're saying. I mean, it really again goes back to the origins of like if that is someone's part of someone's origin story of when their innocence, their essence, their body was harmed first days of being alive, like of course that's going to play a role in the continuum of their life, right? The same way our birth imprints play a role in the continuum of our human life. It's like we have to think about the impact. And like you're saying, um, mm, all of this to me in my body really feels like how far we can come, how disconnected we can become from life, from our innate ability to sense something is off, something is true, something is love, something is ill-intended. And it's devastating to be so far from our true nature as beautiful, holy humans connected to both the animal and our greatest, like our spirit, our great spirit within us, the consciousness, the aliveness, the beauty of those two intersecting. And I mean, I see the way the culture has also bred women, like a raised woman, young women, like on both spectrums, it's on both ends. We see young women who have believed that our essence is to be given away for free. Huge. That if we are digestible, pretty, likable, open, smiling, doing what others want us, living from the external view versus the internal connection, right? Like always thinking, how do I look? What is he thinking? And not enough connection to what do I need? What do I feel? What is happening within me, right? Then from that first imprint of what we are taught to be embodying as girls and young women, going into the world of sexuality, whatever you want, whatever you think, like giving our bodies away in exchange for validation, love, quote unquote, approval, closeness, proximity, being chosen, and that unconscious, deeply painful, you know, I guess contract or whatever you want to call it. I don't like to use those words so much, but like this agreement and how painful that is for both parties, truly, in our true nature. Human beings who want to experience intimacy as a doorway to God, which I believe our true sexual capacity is to bring us close to the beauty, the profound beauty of life and creation and pleasure as liquid love moving through the body, to open our hearts, to open our centers, to feel more life force pull through, to bring us closer to the goodness of life and the beauty and the complexity of our humanness and to integrate it. And when we are instead operating from extraction and commerce in our sexuality, it hits, the wound of like, I'm never enough. I'm never chosen, right? In both men and women, like a man, like, oh wow, I've now, got another woman, like I feel worthy now. I got, and a woman, wow, I've this man, I think he likes me, like I'm beautiful, I'm chosen now. And that whole culture being so far from the truth of intimacy and then bringing, like the conversation of pornography into that and how both ends being exposed to just some of the atrocious things that porn introduces to young people of what is okay. And even if one is not watching it, but just the cultural energetics of being, out as a young person at a bar, or like all these first kind of initiations into adulthood we see in like cities and stuff of like, we're going out to the club, whatever, and how these subconscious infiltrations and the culture like seep into our consciousness. And then we believe that that's how it should be. And um, then coming to a point in life where I feel like, you and I are mirroring and our journeys the last years of like really kind of like unpacking, like, whoa, like, what the fuck? And like so much compassion for humanity and for the journeys we go on, and a deep guardianship of what we are truly, like who we truly are, what we truly need. And I think about my past of entering the world of quote unquote sacred sexuality at like 22, 23, and such beautiful experiences of, being exposed to the more spiritual aspects of our sexual potential and alchemy and the ability to, yeah, like alchemize and, dense emotion through movement, through breath, through pleasure, all these things, and connect to consciousness through life force moving through the body, and then also the other end of like the distortion even in these conscious spaces, and the centering of like what it means to be a quote unquote divine feminine woman, to be fully and this is not all spaces, but just being, exposed and around and at these spaces for like many, many years of my past. A lot of like a woman is to be soft, open, and receptive. But what piece is missing is who earned that access to the tenderness, the beauty, the profound nature of a woman's heart, of a woman's openness, access to the deep inner world that she, holds within. And I think there is just, I just speak to that of like whatever bar culture, but even like sacred sexuality culture, new age, like all the many different subcultures that still find a way of trying to teach like woman's energy and essence is free. And yeah, I just think that there's a lot of like deep seated um, kind of dense stuff that has been carried for generations that we're just consciously being like, whoa, this found its way in a lot of different things, you know, TV, kids show, like there's just all these ways, like, why are we seeing, um, yeah, why are we still seeing this? And how can we shift out of this to a different way to be in relationship to our sexuality, to our hearts, to each other?
Yeah. I love everything that you spoke to, and there's like a couple things that I want to weave in with it, right? Of like from the woman's side, right? Of that relationship to extraction from men, right? And like needing their validation and all of that kind of stuff. I feel the deep wound there, I can sense in myself and just modern women, is that we're not raised with this understanding that like the sacredness of our womanhood and just the reality that we are the creators of the future seven generations automatically means that we have the right to be protected by all men, no matter what, regardless of whether or not we are romantically or sexually involved with them. Like, that is your birthright as a woman to feel safe and protected by the men in your life, by your father, by your uncles, by your grandfather, by your cousins, by your male friends, by your male bosses and teachers, like that their role is to protect you as a woman, right? Like we don't have that currently because of just so much wounding that has happened, right? And so I think about that of like women really conflating sexual attention and romantic attention with safety, the access to safety, the access to protection. And so much of that comes into how do we as women bring our own very solid inner masculine protector online. And this is what I teach women anytime that I'm talking about sex is like your inner masculine has to be so clear. Like so clear that you start to understand what level of external masculine reflection you deserve to have in your life. And that anything less than that is like unacceptable. It's not welcome in your space, right? Like you're just so clear with it. And I also think about, yeah, the balancing that with like the deep compassion too that I hold for men. Like I hold deep compassion for men, even as someone who has experienced so much violence at the hands of men, because I also recognize that like they don't come into the world with that as their blueprint. I don't believe that men are naturally violent. I don't believe that they are naturally like horrendously dominating. I think that their divine design is to be in service to the beauty of fertility and life-giving creation, which is channeled through the body of women. They know that. They're very clear about that, right? Like even the ones who are maybe not fully online, like deep in their spirit, they're aware of that because they came through the body of a woman, right? And so when I think a lot about how to balance this of like holding a high standard in myself internally, of like, I know what kind of men are allowed in my sphere while also having compassion for where you're at right now because I know that you yourself have been through deep wounding. You yourself also have very deep sexual wounds. We talk a lot about the sexual wounding of women. Understandably, it's deeply important. But we don't ever have conversations about what men go through around their sexuality, right? A lot of men having been sexually abused in their childhood, a lot of men going through genital mutilation with circumcision, men being exposed to pornography, like all of the ways in which their sexuality is being attacked. And then I also think a lot about what you were speaking to of like the realm of sacred sexuality, right? And like the world of Tantra or like Neo Tantra and a lot of like New Age stuff. And I went down that path in my 20s and it was not good for me. There was a lot of bad stuff that happened with that. But now I speak a lot about sexuality because so much of it is my deepest wounding. But when I'm speaking to it, it's really coming from that orientation that you were speaking to, which is like, how do you specifically as a woman create safety in your body? How do you develop true trust with the person who's in front of you? What does intimacy actually mean? Like, who gets to have access to your body? Have they worked for it? Have they really worked for it and shown that they care about your heart first and foremost? That they really see you? That they see every part of you and they honor you and they respect you, and that this is like the deepest act of commitment and devotion that they can make to you after all the other acts of commitment and devotion that they should have made to you long before this, right? Like solidifying the union between you sexually is like the last thing that comes. And so whenever I speak on sexuality and I teach on it, it's from that orientation that you're speaking to of like, no, you do not have to be open. You do not have to be free. You not do not have to be like receptive and all giving. That's a lie. That is a betrayal of like what the truth is for you. The truth is right now you're closed. You're not open to this. Why would you be? Why would you be open to this man who has not put in any effort to show that he's trustworthy, to show that he's responsible, that shows that he's respectful, to show that he's committed to you, devoted to all aspects of your life and not just having sex with you, right? And so I feel very similarly to all of that. You have any thoughts? I'm sure you.
So many. Let me just take a moment to like feel into it all. I should have brought my notebook like you. To be, yeah, to be a guardian of our own wombs as women is so essential because everything you're speaking to, it's like, yeah, I'm sure I've spoken to it already in the podcast so far, but if we are not connected and attuned to the voice of our womb, the needs of our womb, our body wisdom, what things feel like when something's not right, when something, is when we're not open. So, it's like we have to bring that awareness and that connection to ourself into dating, into relating with men. That's our responsibility as women, right? And one thing I really I want to speak to is like it is a culture predominantly, like there's so many examples, so many stories we have personally of absent fathers and mothers who were the sole provider. And this is not, the totality, but like so many personal stories of, myself included, of an absent father and a mother who gave so much. And so if we look at a system of, or like, the father being absent, the mother being the one always giving, then a young boy or a young girl is learning that the feminine is to give, 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 give. Like if a young boy is seeing his mother give and work and provide, but also nurture and also love and also clean the house, and then a father who is afraid of being like doesn't want to be needed, perhaps is afraid of the rite of passage of coming into fatherhood and is instead absent. There's so many reasons for that I won't get into, but I'm just speaking of the experience of a young child witnessing this, then those imprints come into our relational world as adults of, oh, the feminine is to be extracted from. And any sign of needing to be responsible or needed, I'm out. As in, like, I'm afraid to be needed. I don't think I'm able to be what you need. Like this is just, you know, the example of seeing an absent father and a mother who's giving a lot. And it takes a lot of reflecting um on to like what does it actually take to be in relationship in reciprocity with each other and be conscious of the patterns and interfaces we might be bringing in relationship together as man and woman and actively reorienting towards something that is of a different nature and grieving what was not given, what was lost, what was absent, what was overgiven, all of that, and being willing to create something different. Um, but I do think that when we are exposed to these things as young children, whether it be like you said, like or like as young people, like pornography, or like something like circumcision, or as young girls being exposed to other young women using their seduction, sexuality, beauty to get needs, all of these things, then we're being informed of what works, what doesn't work on one level, and eventually needing to look at like, this is causing me sickness. This is causing me to repeat the broken patterns of my lineage. And if I want to be an active participant in the new world I am, wanting to birth, wanting to see before my eyes, how do I shift my nature of how I'm showing up in relationship with myself, with others, to be in more coherence with life, with what gives life, with reciprocity.
Yeah, absolutely. To everything you said. And what was really coming through for me was this understanding of like, what is the purpose of relationship? Like, there's a lot of purposes that we could say, but the big, big one for me, where I'm at this point in my life, is like understanding that the partner that we choose, they're coming in with all of their shit, right? As we're coming in with all of our shit, all of our blueprints, everything that we learned from our parents, everything that we learned from the culture. And what I see it as is like ideally two conscious human beings who really are honest with themselves about who they are, right? They know to the best of their ability what their patterns are, what they have inherited, what's going on in the field. And showing up and saying, this is who I am. I'm working through this to the best of my ability. My promise to you is that I will always be honest to myself and to you about where I'm at with things. But my offering to you is that we utilize this union to reorient that whole story, like all of that can be obliterated, right? If we like are able to truly come together as honest beings and to say, like, no, we will not let these patterns continue. Like, we will not allow this to continue shaping the children more than anything, right? When I think about family systems that are coming in and the person that you choose to create a union with and create a child with, like, the responsibility for women in particular, right? Because we are the ones who carry that life forward. It's coming through in our body. And oftentimes it's not going to be the mother that's absent from a child's life, right? Like women take on that responsibility 9 times out of 10. And so, what stories are you allowing to be translated, transmuted, like received in your womb space? And what stories are you saying, this will end? This will not continue, right? And so when I'm thinking about union and the divine design of it, it's just like there is no other purpose other than to reorient your lineage towards thriving life, towards love, towards connection, towards truth, towards beauty. Like that is why you come together with people, right? And the choice to do that is so important as women of like what we allow in and as men too, right? What stories are you repeating with your sexuality, with your energy, with your love, with your heart? And what are you deciding that's not going to continue forward, right? Okay, we could talk on and on and on, but I think it's good for us to wrap up with all of that. How can people connect with you and your work and everything that you're offering in the world? How can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram. I'm Feminine Origins. My website is also almost ready to be released. That'll be feminineorigins.ca. I'll also be at a few festivals this summer in Canada. You can find out all about those on my Instagram page. And I also hold Wise Womb Ways, an immersion for women to deepen an intimacy with their womb, with the cosmological elemental aspect of their womb, but also going into practical rituals and ways of orienting to the wellness of the womb, and the deep, wise spiritual nature of our wombs. And I also offer private mentorship, a program called Womb Guardian, which is a 4 or 9 month container. And again, a place, a container, a time in reality to really deepen in relationship with your womb, with your womanhood, with your essence, with your power, with your creational potential, and be supported by another womb devotee in a lot of care and a lot of attention and connection through that threshold of inhabiting the fullness of your power more. So these are my devotions. And if you're in the Toronto area, I also hold in-person womb work, and that is a big, big, big part of my heart as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all of your medicine with the world, your in-person work, your virtual work, for coming on and having this beautiful conversation with me. So much love and deep gratitude and respect for your path and for everything that you're pouring out, and just so excited to see how everything continues to evolve and expand. So many blessings on all of your path. Thank you so much, Britt.
Thank you, Claire, for having me and for, yeah, weaving this conversation of a new world that is underway, that I deeply believe in, and that we are all actively participating in, pivoting towards. I am excited and also still holding grief for what has been and deep belief in what can be. So thank you for dreaming into that with me on this podcast, and all those listening as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much.